Number 4. Jeanne Ann Child. Child was 35 years old and worked at the prostitute around the time she was killed. Officers were called to her apartment after the neighbors that were living below reported water was soaking through the ceiling. When the police arrived, Child was found in her bathroom tub, naked, with numerous and deep stab wounds, and she was only wearing socks at the time. The water in the bathroom was still running, and blood covered the walls of her bedroom, living room, and bathroom, according to the warrant. Investigators found semen and blood on nearby clothes and towels. DNA was taken for both. During the time of the killing, Minnesota did not allow DNA to be used as evidence in court, and there was no other way to link DNA to a suspect. The case was eventually closed and deemed unsolved. 22 years later, the police opened the case back up, where they got DNA samples tested and compared them to online genealogy websites. They found a match, and the primary suspect was a man named Jerry Westrom, age 53. In January 2019, officers began to surveil Westrom with the intent of obtaining a DNA sample. They tracked him to a hockey game where he was observed ordering a hot dog and using a napkin to wipe his mouth, where he later threw it away. The surveillance team made their move and recovered the dirty napkin from the trash and had it tested. The BCA determined that the napkin contained a mixture of DNA, but a major male profile observed was consistent with the DNA samples recovered from the crime scene. Minneapolis police then arrested Westrom Monday in Waite Park. Police say he denied having an involvement in the murder and had no knowledge of why his DNA wouldn't be present at the scene. Police say Westrom's DNA was also found to be a match to the sperm cell fraction sample recovered from the comforter on the bed and a towel in the bedroom. Westrom's neighbor described him as a nice guy and a family man. As well, his own father confirmed that he lived nearby in 1993 during the time of the murder. Westrom's criminal history shows traffic violations and multiple DWI convictions. He was convicted in 2015 for agreeing to hire a prostitute in Steers County. He admitted to talking to a woman he found in the escort section and planned to pay her $100 for sex. With these evidence, Jerry Westrom was charged second-degree murder for the 1993 slaying of Jeanne Ann Child. Police admitted it took many years to find justice for her, but that they never gave up. Westrom was released from jail Friday night after posting a $500,000 bail. Number 3. Holly Cassano. Cassano was only 22 years old when she was found fatally stabbed in her home in the Candlewood Estates mobile home park in Mohammed. Her mother found her dead body on November 2, 2009. She reportedly had been stabbed dozens of times and her body showed evidence of sexual assault. An autopsy revealed that she had been stabbed 55 to 60 times. There was blood in the bedroom, hallway, bathroom, living room, kitchen sink, and even the outside of the door to the home. After the killing, vaginal and rectal swabs, as well as swabs of blood stains on the victim's legs, were sent to the Illinois State Police Crime Lab. Scientists developed a DNA profile from an unknown man. Shurik said the scientists concluded the semen and the blood came from the same person, leading them to believe the killer was injured during the attack. Over 100 DNA samples were sent to the lab, but there was no connection to the unknown man. A private genetic genealogy company hired by the sheriff's office revealed that the DNA found inside Cassano's home possibly came from the main suspect, and his name was Michael Henslick. He lived with his parents and was only a few blocks away in the same mobile home park. In August, sheriff detectives learned Henslick was a possible match. Shurik said they followed Henslick and picked up a discarded cigarette butt to use for comparison samples. It was a full match, Shurik said, of the comparison between the DNA of the cigarettes and the evidence of the murder scene. Shurik said detectives learned that Henslick was friends with Cassano's cousin, and that he and Cassano were about the same age and in the same class at the Mohammed Seymour High School. Shurik was one of the 3 detectives who interviewed Henslick on August 28 after his arrest. Henslick waived his Miranda rights and agreed to talk to him without an attorney present. Asked by Reitz if Henslick admitted his role in the crime, Shurik replied he did. He said he stabbed her. He said all over. Shurik said Henslick also said the scars he still has on the inside of both forearms came from the attack on Cassano. Shurik said detectives took DNA samples from Henslick after his arrest and learned on Wednesday from the state crime lab they indeed matched the blood and semen samples collected at the mobile home in 2009. Henslick is facing murder charges and is being held on a $10 million bond. Number 2. Vicki Lynn Hoskinson. Hoskinson was 8 years old when she disappeared while riding her bike to mail a birthday card to her aunt. This was the first time Carlson had allowed any of her children to go out on their own. After 20 minutes, Carlson sent Vicky's 11-year-old sister, Stephanie, to look for her. Stephanie found Vicky's bike lying on the side of the road, only a few blocks away. Carlson put Vicky's bike in her car trunk and called the Pima County Sheriff's Department. After interviews with possible witnesses, coach at elementary school stated he saw a suspicious-looking driver parked in the car in an alley beside the school on September 17. Hall was supervising a group of students when he suddenly noticed a suspicious car. Hall said that the driver was making strange gestures and was struggling with his stick shift. He memorized his license plate and ran to his car to get a notepad and wrote it down. He later gave it to the police after hearing Vicky went missing. Another occasion was that a little girl said the driver made an obscene gesture to her as he passed by her house. Another person even saw the same driver back into a telephone pole. The trace on the license plate led to a 28-year-old man named Frank Jarvis Atwood. Agents ran a background check and found kidnapping and child molestation charges. Atwood was out on parole in California, and they went to the address where Atwood's vehicle was registered at. It was Atwood's parents' home. Luckily, a few hours later, Atwood called his parents stating that his car had broken down in Texas and he needed money wired to get it fixed. His mother wrote down the address in Kerrville, Texas, where Atwood waited for a new transmission. His father drove to a nearby payphone and reported the address to the FBI agents. Agents from the FBI Texas Bureau detained Atwood and his companion, James McDonald, at the mechanic shop on September 20th and impounded the car. During questioning, Atwood told the investigator that he was in Vicky's neighborhood on September 17, the same day she disappeared. Staying in a nearby park around 3 p.m., he stated he left to buy drugs and that he returned to the park around 5 p.m. but he did not say where he was during the 2-hour period. McDonald corroborated Atwood's story and told investigators that he and Atwood had an argument in the park around 3 p.m. After that, Atwood left for 2 hours and returned with bloodstains on his hand and clothing. Atwood told McDonald he got into a fight with a drug dealer and stabbed him. Investigators found 2 men who claimed Atwood spent 2 nights in their trailer. One of them was named Mad Dog, who claimed that Atwood's clothes and hands were bloodstained. That he suggested Atwood should get rid of his clothes. Atwood told him that he stabbed a double-crossing drug dealer. There was no physical evidence in the car that could tie him to Vicky's disappearance. Accident reconstruction experts matched a pink paint on the front bumper of Atwood's car to the color of the paint on Vicky's bike and traced damages to the car's gravel pad to one of the bike pedals. Traces of nickel plating from the bumper were also found on the bike. Returning back to the site where the bike was found, investigators found damage to a mailbox post about 12 inches above the ground, consistent with the height of Atwood's car, and believed this to be the same spot where the car allegedly hit Vicky's bike at a slow speed. Atwood's alleged bloodstained clothing from the day of Vicky's disappearance was never found. After 10 days of Vicky's disappearance, Atwood was arrested and charged with 1 count of kidnapping. A month after Vicky's disappearance, Atwood returned to Arizona to stand trial. Because of the publicity of the case in Tucson, the trial was moved to Phoenix. Jury selection took about 6 weeks, and his bail was denied. On December 3, 1984, Atwood pleaded not guilty to the kidnapping charges. On April 12, 1985, a hiker found a small human skull in the Tucson desert, about 20 miles from where the bike had been found. The skeleton had been scattered by animals. Due to the state of the remains, the cause of death could not be determined, nor whether the child had been sexually assaulted. Dental records confirmed they were indeed Vicky's remains. To within 48 hours of Vicky's disappearance, Atwood was indicted and found guilty of the first-degree murder and was sentenced to death on May 8, 1987. During his many years on death row, Atwood has gotten the chance to get married, be baptized in a Greek Orthodox Christian church, attain 2 associate's degrees, a bachelor's degree in English pre-law, and a master's degree in literature. He even wrote 6 books, 5 of which have been published. He's also working with people on the outside to create a website. In 2002, he was one of the longest seated prisoners on death row. He claims that police tampered with evidence found on his car, and no physical evidence has been found placing Vicky in his car. He has ongoing appeals for judicial review of his case. They have been denied. Number 1. Melissa Brannon. Brannon was 5 years old when she suddenly disappeared from a Christmas party on December 3, 1989 in Fairfax County, Virginia. Many speculate she may have been murdered. Her body has never been found. She was last seen wearing a red skirt and blue Sesame Street sweater. The holiday party took place in Woodside's clubhouse, which drew about 200 residents. Woodside was known for its friendliness and sense of community, so the mother, Tammy Brannon, had no reason to worry about her daughter's safety among her neighbors. Tammy had discovered an open window in a utility closet by the back of the room. This was the only clue. The police, citizen volunteers, and over 300 military personnel quickly mobilized a search party for Melissa. They distributed about 35,000 flyers, 10,000 bumper stickers. Local movie theaters played home video footage of Melissa. As well, a $100,000 award was offered for help. But still, no sign of Melissa. Investigators interviewed everyone who was at the party the night Melissa was thought to have been kidnapped. And the main suspect was Caleb Hughes, who had left the party roughly the same time that Brandon was reported missing. As well, guests recalled that Hughes paid real close attention to Melissa at the party and even spoke to her, although he would later deny it. They continued to investigate Caleb Hughes because he told a questioning story about his whereabouts. When detectives interviewed him, they caught him washing his clothes, shoes, and belt in the washer, the same clothes he wore the day of the party. Unlucky, everything has gone through the cycle. Trusting his gut, detective told Hughes, "I think you took Melissa out of that party." "Prove it," Hughes replied. So the police did. Even though Hughes denied having any contact with the little girl, the investigators began a heavy search of his home and car. To collect hairs and fibers, forensic experts carefully had to run tape across all the surfaces in Hughes' house and car. Even the smallest bit of evidence caught on the tape had to be cataloged and taken to a scraping room. Then they were examined under a microscope. Furthermore, 2 fibers found in the passenger seat of Hughes' car matched a rabbit fur coat that Brandon's mother was wearing at the party. Since it could have been possible that the 2 fibers had innocently landed there, the police would need additional evidence. Even though Brandon was wearing a blue sweater at the time, she disappeared and police discovered more than 50 blue fibers in the car. However, direct forensic comparisons were impossible to make, since Brandon and her clothing were still missing. Investigators learned that Melissa's sweater was part of a Sesame Street outfit manufactured only by JCPenney, and with this, they were able to obtain an identical sample straight from the manufacturer. Investigators believe Hughes took off Melissa's pink coat in the car, sexually assaulted her, and then killed her. Forensic files noted that most strangers who kidnap children murder them within 3 hours. With evidence files stacked up against them, Commonwealth prosecutors convinced a jury that Hughes had abducted Melissa with intent to defile her. Police believe Hughes killed Melissa. They had no evidence to file a murder charge against him. Hughes was convicted of abduction with intent to defile on March 8, 1991, and sentenced to 50 years in prison. Now, Hughes is set to be released from prison, and until this day, Melissa Brandon's body has never been found.